2024 witnessed a substantial fuel price surge. Well,
among other things.
We all know that. Significantly impacting businesses and households. The oil sector witnessed relative growth and stability as oil production output hit, I think by the end of the year, it had actually hit about 1.7, even though per day, 1.7 million barrels per day, even though we still haven't met our OPEC quota. But we're crawling gradually towards it. The good news is that our output has increased. But petrol loading began at the Dangote refineries, and towards the end of the year, Port Harcourt Refinery came on board, Warri Refinery came on board just a few days ago. So for me, all that is good news. But I'm not the analyst. We have a panel with us this morning. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Majid Dahiru, energy security advocate, as well as columnist.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we also have Dr. Kawade Okwefa, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Good morning. And joining us virtually is the former President of Trade Union Congress, Mr. Peter Esele. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good of you to join us. Now, two refineries have come on stream, Mr. Dahiru. Our output has increased. What else? There were no fuel queues over December for the first time in many years. These are all wonderful, should I say, newsies? Which for you should be number one?
I think the coming on stream of a number of refineries, after many years of elusive promises, is for me the number one in all of these developments. You talked about growth in the energy sector. For me, what we had in 2024 was development in the energy sector. First, the largest single train refinery in the world, which is located in Nigeria, the Dangote Refinery, came on stream fully when it began to produce PMS sometime in March of 2024. And before the end of the year, two government-owned refineries that are managed by the NNPC, the Port Harcourt Refinery, the Old Port Harcourt Refinery, and the Warri Refinery also came on stream. And what that has done is that it has added to the availability and accessibility component of energy security for Nigerians. The prices are still quite high. They are not yet at the affordability threshold of most citizens, including myself and you. However, availability was the reason why you didn't see queues during the festive period. So I think the first of many steps towards achieving energy security for Nigeria was taken firmly in 2024. And I hope that it will be sustained going into the new year and ahead.
Well, we're in the new year already. Dr. Kwefa, do you agree?
Yeah, I cannot.
Or what's the topmost for you?
The topmost for me, I will reframe it, is to say is the availability of energy, not just petrol or PMS.
Okay, options.
And that is the same thing you mentioned by those three refineries coming on stream. Dangote though earlier, but fully in 2024, and we had to it. Apart from the fact that energy is not available, the sufficiency can be guaranteed. And when you mentioned the availability for those of us in the mobility sector who would rely more on these energy sources from the oil and gas industry, it cannot be stretched further. And then you also need to also understand the audacity to take some decisions to make sure these things are possible. And that also goes to the way the government have handled the situation. Not as if all this started in 2024, it started earlier with the PIA. There was no political will to get it done. The previous administration, the Buhari administration, had the will, they got it done. There was not full will to get it fully implemented. The current government came in and audaciously put in the push to get it done. And once the PIA implementation gets increased, I mean the force was put into it, you see all things coming into play. And also note that this is going to have the most effect, not like we have seen in 2024, but as we go into 2025, we'll now start seeing how this will start impacting the transportation sector, the mobility sector, and the standard of living.
So how about the logistics sector? Because that affects not just the I selected it deliberately because it has a significant impact on prices of items in the country.
Yes. Okay. For the logistics sector, the key is availability of the energy source. The next will be the cost of the energy cost, and with all these competition we have seen coming up and down, and then we can now predict, we can really say the price will be in this range now, not that before when you can see the price. So for the logistics sector, this is a big boost. Now we are sure of availability, we are sure of options, then we are also sure of diversification. Don't forget, you're talking of petroleum. The gas sector there was high gas commercialization.
Oh, we're definitely coming to the gas sector.
So for the logistics sector, there are now energy diversification, there are now options, and the sector can sit down and say, in the next 2-3 months, I need to do this, and this will likely be the cost, because now the cost is more stable, even though there will be fluctuations up and down, but we have seen that the possibility of competition stabilizing the price, and the possibility of competition bringing down the price also is there. And so for us in the logistics sector, this is one of the things we've been looking for.
Okay.
Mr. Saleh, some have criticized the amount of money used to revamp these refineries. I mean, it costs, I can confidently say an arm and a leg, and they say that all that money could have been used building another, more modern refinery. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, sometimes we are, in this part of the world, we are so used to hearing bad news that when good news comes up, we also begin to question good news. So, first thing is, it's about $2 billion that was borrowed for this refinery's rehabilitation, thereabout. And if you say, go and ask Dangote the cost of him building his refinery, it cost Dangote more than $20 billion to have his refinery built. But one of my big takeaway from all of this is that first, there is competition in the system. And secondly, citizens are also now beginning to also believe government, because I listened to your studio comment before we came on board, where you were talking about at least we now have availability, there is no scarcity. And then your colleague was talking about the various prices in time yaw. But what we have now is going forward is we are going to have an NNPC that knows that it has to perform or it will lose its market share. And then you have a behemoth like Dangote Refinery that is also on stream. So I'm looking at it that we are better off having all these refineries, one from the government, which is 100% public owned, and the other private sector. And what the government, NNPC, for example, is going to do, if you ask me why I am happy that NNPC is on stream, is that government has control over whatever NNPC is doing. You don't have control over what Dangote Refinery is going to do, because Dangote has debt to pay. So that too is something we must be open to, and not go ahead and think that we should have our energy security entirely in the private sector.
Well, that's one sore point that it would seem like we're still handling, Mr. Saleh, because we can't ignore the fact that the conversations between the NNPCL as a private sector operator and a competitive operator, a competition to other people, other practitioners in the sector, as well as a government-owned facility and a former regulator, so to speak. And then the conversations going on between them and Dangote refineries in particular is something. So what's my question is based on the fact that those conversations have had an impact on perception and prices eventually. Do you see that tapering down? Do you see us coasting now, or you think maybe we can still have some other issues come up in the course of this new year?
Yes, we are still going to have some other issues come up in the course of the new year. But the most important thing is that there is nothing wrong in having conversations along the line. There's nothing wrong in having disagreement. Over a period of time, water will find its level. There are laws. Now you have a regulator. NNPC is no longer a regulator in that sector. So what you have is that, yes, NNPC and Dangote will go back and forth. Both, once the two refineries come up, Dangote, NNPC will be leaving millions of barrels of crude. So it's very, when we did a review, I think on this same show, we did a review on this same energy sector looking into 2024. And what I told you on that show was that I don't think NNPC can meet their deadline, but I'm very sure the refinery was going to come on stream. And the reason why I said that was because of how the funds for rehabilitation of those refineries were sourced. They were sourced from Exim, and Exim don't release money except you meet the various milestones. So I had that confidence. And then number two is that you also have the GMD of NNPC. I think he would have been so embarrassed himself every time meeting his timeline. But at the end of the day, he knows he had to perform. And gladly, he has performed and delivered on those refineries. So looking into 2025, what are the prognosis for 2025? Yes, it's looking good. It's better than what we had in 2024. First, refineries are on. Dangote is on. NNPC is on. It's possible BOA will come on later in the year. Competition will be on. And then the average price right now is a little less than 1,000 naira. And don't also forget that if you have price hike in international crude oil price, you are going to pay more at the pump stations.
You just raised an issue, Mr. Sele, and I'm going to bring it to Mr. Dahiru here, and maybe Mr. Okwe if I want to speak to it eventually. And that's the fact that, so now, you just said it, BOA will come on stream, hopefully, and I think the NNPCL is also working on Kaduna, and the second wing of the Port Harcourt refineries, which, of course, cumulatively will probably give us something on the average of about 450,000 barrels per day. That's from the government. Dangote refinery, 650,000 barrels per day. That's more than 1 million already.
Yes.
Barrels of crude per day. BOA is coming up with 250,000 barrels per day. If the federal government has to supply all of those in 1 month per day, on the average now we are making about 1.7 barrels. Thank you, 1.7 million barrels per day. If we have to sell, or rather hand this to these local refineries, 1.2 on the average barrels per day, where is the federal government going to get forex from?
Okay, first, it's important to note that if the government is going to sell crude to local refineries, it's going to sell in dollars as well. No, it's in dollars.
They said that they are going to be
that's a peculiar arrangement between the government and Dangote.
And Dangote, okay.
The PIA has internationalized our local oil and gas industry, particularly when it comes to upstream, midstream, and downstream. So everything is internationalized. So you're buying crude from NNPC at the rate that is quoted internationally. But be that as it may, it should not change the government in any way. But government has obligations towards some of its clients that, for the sales agreements have been reached and all that. However, I think what you're trying to ask is adequacy of supply to local refineries. The truth is there's no country
at the same time
unable to export. Yes. Now, you see, there's no country that I know of in the world, not Saudi Arabia, not United States of America, not Russia, that relies solely on locally produced crude for its refineries. Okay. There must be importation of crude to service local refineries, as well as exportation of crude to bring in foreign exchange. It was interesting to know that Saudi Arabia is a major producer of crude oil. Saudi has the capacity to produce 12 million barrels per day, even though it does 10 now.
How?
Yes. But Saudi still imports crude oil, including from Nigeria, that is struggling to meet up a quota.
This is oil politics, right?
It's called oil dynamics. Because, you see, energy security entails supply must exceed demand at all times. So you must show up your supply needs by keeping supply chains open, both from local and foreign sources.
Okay.
America, for instance, is also a major producer of oil. America produces as much as between 8.5 and 10 million barrels of crude per day. But America imports almost the same quantity of crude into its jurisdiction. In fact, to make matters worse, America has 132 refineries functioning as at this morning. America is a major exporter of refined products. America also imports refined petroleum into this country. Saudi Arabia, for example, is the 4th largest exporter of refined petroleum. The 4th most imported item into Saudi Arabia is refined petroleum. So there will always be import and export of crude. So the controversy surrounding NNPC and Dangote over crude supply, ordinarily shouldn't have arisen in the first place. If the promoters of Dangote Refinery and other refineries understand that, you have to secure your source of crude from anywhere in the world because it is still the same price. You're going to pay in dollars. So that will not be a conflict if you have even more refineries. While Nigeria is still trying to ramp up production, for me, Nigeria should produce anywhere between 5 and 7 million barrels of crude per day for our population of 20 million people. That should be the minimum we should do as a country. So I'm sure all hands are on deck to ramp up production. What that is being done, if you have a refinery in Nigeria, source for crude anywhere you can get it. There's nothing unhealthy about it. It is part of the dynamics of international oil marketing and trading.
Despite the agreement with Dangote, Dangote is even importing crude, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying.
To meet its requirements.
It is essential for him to import. He cannot rely solely on the local market. Though you have countries, for instance, with refineries that do not produce crude at all. South Korea, for example.
Singapore.
India.
That's all they do in Singapore.
But they don't have crude oil.
They don't have
import
crude.
all of their crude oil, but they have refineries abound in this country. And they're more competitive than even some of our oil-producing countries in Africa. So it doesn't matter whether you import crude or not. It's part of the template, the pricing, and supply chain mechanism of the oil and gas industry internationally.
So, Mr. Kwefa, our budget is predicated on, well, the outlook is 2 million barrels per day. We're now doing 1.7. So you could say that we're approaching 2 million gradually. Without dealing with oil theft and insecurity and all the things, degradation in the area, so it leads to unrest happening in the oil-producing areas, how do you think we're going to achieve this 2 million? Where he is saying that we even need about 8 million.
But let me say once again that I totally agree with Mr. Majid Dairo that Nigeria needs more than 2 billion barrels per day, and we can do that. And if you take oil theft out, I think we are currently at above 2 billion. Now I take you back barrels per day.
Yes.
If you go back to between 2016 to 2019, you recall when the federal government moved into the creek to discuss with the Kriegers. And we went as far as 2.0 or 1.9 million barrels per day. And what that tells us is that oil theft is a critical part. And if you look at what has been happening since towards the end of 2023 to now, while the major IOCs are divesting from the onshore, you see the Nigerian companies are taking it off. So they will be in a better place to manage the security challenges around that area. So we are expected to see more production. Also, in the last 12 months, the Nigerian government have also reactivated marginal fuels that are hitherto not producing, like 13, OML 13, 18, 27 or 29. They've come back on stream in the Akpo area, Madu area. So you see all those onshore marginal fields they are now coming back to stream. Then you see local capacity to technology transfer to local companies like SNEPCO and the rest of them. They are taking over those areas. And you see the recently signed agreement with Shell on the Bonga field. So you will see all those IOCs doing much more prospecting on the offshore. So there is, I have no doubt. Now that we have, like I said, we will continue to, Dangote will have to import.
Yeah.
He can't rely on Nigerian crude. Nigerian crude is too sweet. He needs a blend with WTI for his own profitability. So that's why the argument, I said it here before, that there was no reason to argue. It's just, everybody is just trying to protect his own territory.
Okay.
So I have no doubt that really we will surpass that. And also note that we now have a regulator in the downstream, NMDPRA, they're doing fine. You have a regulator in the upstream, that is NUPRC, they're doing fine. And the NUPRC has made this projection. NMDPRA has made a projection based on demands from these refineries to NUPRC. And NUPRC had come out to say they are in position to meet the requirements. So with these PRA agencies, regulators that are in place, with NNPC, Dangote, BUA, whoever are they, and all these other Aradel, Walter Smiths, and the remaining modular refineries, who are the operators? NNPC is now an operator, just like Dangote.
Okay.
Everybody will sit tight, competition will set in. And they also will now be going to prospect for crude, because the secret to this thing is that as a refinery, you should have your own feedstock exclusively to you so that you don't run short. The whole world is looking for crude, and don't forget, Nigerian crude is the sweetest. And
Okay.
all the
I don't know what honey you people put into it.
Bonnie Light.
Let me ask Mr. Sele. Now, there's something that Dr. Kwefe just mentioned now about PIA and then the local communities from Alero's question. This whole oil theft thing. The PIA makes some provisions. How do you see us enforcing those provisions in a way that the host communities, the people through whose communities these pipelines pass across, run through, can actually take responsibility? Knowing that the cost of stealing crude is not cheap. It's not like you just go into a shop and just break the glass and take it. You have to be, it's costly to steal crude. Consequently, it's a high-end thievery, if I can use the word.
I think you actually even answered the question, because you used the word high-end. And how do you expect the host community to be able to deliver those high-end technology for stealing crude? So one thing is very clear. I think for the government to be able to achieve its aim, I think the Chief of Defense Staff, it has to come from the various security agencies. You cannot steal, I would say it categorically, you cannot steal a barrel of crude confidently and comfortably without the of the various security agencies. What the host communities are doing, they are just, it's like somebody going to take a jerry can and fetch 25 liters or 30 liters. The real players steal 200,000, 300,000 barrels of crude daily. And then the real players have a ship waiting. Because of course, you and I know that for any ship to come into the country, berth, and move crude out, there must be certain collusion between the various security agencies for that to happen.
Yep.
When we keep emphasizing host community is just a tip of the iceberg. We need to go after the major players who are behind it. Luckily, NNPC is applying a lot of technology now. In NNPC, they have their control room, which makes it easier for them to look at what is happening. Even as big as Saudi Arabia with its laws and very punishing way of dealing with stuff like that, Saudi Arabia has a technology where it can view the entire pipeline, whatever comes in, whatever goes out. So we need to apply technology to check all of this. And then the president in his media chat, the president alluded to the fact that you just don't go ahead and say you want to fight corruption. You just have to put things in place to make sure nobody will dare go to that direction. So first is ensure that your military, your security agencies are disciplined, and those who are behind it are brought to book. Once you are able to do that, host community will naturally fall in line, because in the PIA, the host community has a lot of benefit if something of such is not happening. So please, let's put our attention on the major players in that sector who are responsible by commission or omission in
Are you then saying that the PIA is just papering over cracks, knowing that that same law prescribes some kind of disadvantage to any community where from oil stealing happens?
We even have laws that ensures that if you steal crude, there are laws that will give you appropriate sanction for that. So what the PIA is trying to do is also trying to look at the host community and look for a way to kind of frighten people there. But at the end of the day, I don't think, from my own experience, host community are not really major players in the game. The major player, we all know those who are. We know, just that people sometimes don't want to talk about it. But the NNPC, for what they've been doing, and some arm of the security agencies recently, they've been able to, because of the spotlight. I think channels also get credit for that. They did a series of investigation, and they went to the various creeks and really shone light on it, on how crude oil theft is being carried out in the country. And you and I are also aware that a shipload of crude was actually set ablaze. And on this channel, we also started asking questions, why do that? So when you don't bring anybody to book, then that invariably means that you are encouraging the theft to go on.
Yes.
Those who are behind crude oil theft, we've not heard of anyone that has been prosecuted. We've only heard of ships that have been burnt. So if you want a change in any society, if you do the crime, you must do the time.
Of course. Mr. Dairu, we can't talk about this without talking about the aging infrastructure and the divestment of some of the IOCs. How do we attract investment? Because this whole sector seems to be coming up again. So how do we attract investment into that sector so that all this we're talking about will come into fruition?
Okay, yes, I think in the outgone years, maybe because the president himself, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, has some background in the oil and gas industry as a former treasurer of a major oil company in Nigeria. And he also appointed the Minister of Petroleum, who is a lawyer. And this is the post-PIA era. So you need somebody who has legal background with a grasp of the commercial side of oil and gas industry and a competent team to the NNPC, working together as one government. I think they've been able to clear a lot of hurdles in the area of investment, from administrative issues to legal issues and to issues that have to do with the art of deal making. So the president's trips across the world has yielded some results. And what we need to do is to sustain that spirit of a government now acting as a businessman and not just as a political entity. And so what we've seen is that the first time in 12 years, we've seen inflow of investments into Nigeria like never before. And that is why the prospect of ramping up production beyond or above the current 1.7 million barrels per day is quite very, very bright. As we speak, Shell has agreed to return to Nigeria, and they are dedicating a quarter of their 2025 investment to Nigerian market. We've also seen a lot of other companies coming. ENI is coming to actually kickstart production in the OPA 245. As soon as the legal conundrum around that issue is cleared and efforts are underway, that will bring in about $20 billion of investments. So we're already seeing movements in this direction because you have the president, like I said, the Minister of Petroleum, Oil, Lopobri, the GMD of NNPC, Melekiara, and other stakeholders working as one government. They are clearly the whole. So the president sits down and asks critical questions. Why are we not having enough investment? And they tell him, and immediately uses instruments, executive instruments, to clear the way because he's hands-on. And this is one aspect you can give him credit. People are going to criticize him a lot. We find this aspect of his administration quite ingenious. And
so you like the deal-making part?
I believe government is a business. I believe that government has business doing business. And any government that cannot do business has no business being in government. And I'm excited that...
I think that's a quotable quote. You need to say it again.
I believe that government has business doing business. Okay. And that the only business of government is to do business. And any government that cannot do business has no business being in government.
Okay.
And that is why I'm excited that the NNPC under this administration has been able to revive 2 of its refineries. And I'll take the implication of that. Beyond energy security, it is revenue. Exports of LPFO and other base products from the Port Harcourt Refinery has been hitting the international market. So meaning beyond crude exports, Nigeria now has a diversified source of sustainable foreign exchange from the products that will be exported from our refineries that comes into government coffers. Now this is the difference. The Nigerian people, you and I, own NNPC through the Ministry of Finance Incorporated and Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated. It's our company. So at the end of the year, the activities of their refinery production activities will come into our foundation account as dividends, in addition to payment of royalties and taxes into the same foundation account by the same company. So we're expecting the NNPC to declare a fatter dividend at the end of 2025 because of the operations and the export activity taking place in Port Harcourt and Warri as we speak. That is one way to raise revenue away from taxation and to grow the wealth of nations.
There's something that Mr. Sele said the other time, and I'd like you to speak to it, that competition will always happen. In fact, in responding to Alera's question, he said, look, we have gotten so used to bad news that when good news comes, we question it. Now, the bad press that the NNPCL has gotten over the years, how do you see it? First of all, does it have any value? And then how do you see the NNPC itself reversing that bad press?
By simply performing. I mean, the time they told us that Port Harcourt Refinery has come on stream, people expected that after about a week or so of functionality, we will have heard that it has gone moribund again. It is still producing as at this morning and distributing products locally and internationally. In fact, the reduction in price you saw in the price of PMS was because of the competitive edge that the NNPC brought into the market. That first price is downwards a little. So it is still working about 2 months plus after that investment was made. Again, nobody told us when the refinery was going to come up. There was no timeline set. And suddenly we heard that it has started working. Again, if a refinery is sustained over time and it works and it comes on stream 100% and it doesn't go moribund again, it means trust and integrity will have been established between the Nigerian people and the management of their company. See, this is our company. And for those who think that government has no business in the energy sector, that is the greatest disservice you can do to the Nigerian people. Energy cannot be left, like Dr. Sele said, energy management cannot be left in the hands of private individuals alone because energy is a matter of national security. And you know why? Energy is the oxygen of economic productivity, without which economies die. And that is why when you hear that government has a responsibility of security and welfare, that security includes energy security. And that is why an oil producing country like Nigeria must have its government maintain presence in the midst of production in energy products and services. Because it has a responsibility to guarantee you availability, accessibility, and affordability of energy sources and products. Dangote refineries and any other private refinery does not have such obligations towards you as a citizen. So Dangote can start to close shop today, sell off his refinery, and invest in real estate. Where does that live in Nigeria? But government has a responsibility. And that is why even the headquarters of capitalism today, which is America may not have a national oil company, but it has a strategic petroleum reserve that it uses to regulate the sector to ensure supplies, availability, affordability, and accessibility.
Okay. Dr. The competition, if you look in your, what's that glass that they usually look in?
Crystal ball.
If you look into your crystal ball, what's your outlook, particularly of market prices in the year 2025? I'm asking that against the backdrop again of logistics.
I'm asking you to be a wizard.
As I said, crystal ball. Because a good number of people, in the sector have told us that the price of products are sometimes largely dependent on logistics, movements from place to place all over the country. So if you would look into that crystal ball, how do you see price trajectory for Nigeria?
One, international pricing will affect the price of crude and the cost of energy. However, looking at that, there is also in place the gas commercialization project. Because even though gas is also internationally priced, it is locally produced in excess. So there is much emphasis now in using gas in the logistics and supply chain sector. That's where you see the auto gas is coming up. You see also use of electric vehicles, not just for vehicles of cars, even in aviation they're working so hard on it. The same thing in the shipping, maritime sector. You have so many aspects of the maritime. When you see a ship, it's using diesel, heavy oils and the rest, but there's some part of it, when it gets to the harbor, it shuts down and switches to alternate energy sources because those ones are cheaper on the long run. So in the logistics area, the emphasis now is to also, because of the net zero carbon emission, is to move towards a cheaper energy source, which is also coming from another product from this crude oil refining and also from natural gas. So the logistics sector is moving towards natural gas. And that is why you see government is promoting the CNG initiative, not just for mobility, it's also for production. If you go along this corridor now, this is the Lagos-Ibadan axis. Most, if not all, the major manufacturers on this axis are using CNG to power the factory. So while the competition goes on in the petroleum sector, you will see that the logistics sector has looked far ahead. We are now at about 100 vehicles converted. Ogun State has converted all its commercial buses. Lagos State is planning to bring in about 2,000 CNG buses. Government, during this Christmas, a lot of people took CNG. So you will see the prices of logistics, prices, cost of mobility also will come down because the energy sector is now undergoing serious reform. And that reform is not just in the petroleum or in the crude sector, it's also in the gas commercialization sector. You've seen the Nigerian government through NNPC have ramped up the gas expansion project. Recently, I think NMDPR also gave about, is it 120 billion to 6 local companies for the gas infrastructure expansion project. So for people in the logistics sector, it's a win-win. You have options of petrol, you have option of gas, then you have option of electric or then the Ministry of Steel is also putting so much effort on this lithium exploration and processing in Nigeria. So for us, if you can reduce the cost of mobility, the cost of goods will come down. The standard of living will also come down.
We understand that this CNG thing, that CNG trucks are queuing up in this Magboro area, and they're causing, is it that there's a shortage of gas or what?
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah, not only in Magboro, it's also happening in Abuja, and they are mostly, I don't want to mention the company.
It's one particular company.
One particular company.
Okay.
Actually, there is no gainsaying or denying the fact that there is infrastructure challenge in the
because we don't have enough
CNG.
yet.
Because the rate of adoption of CNG is moving so fast beyond the expectation.
Okay.
And that is why I think NNPC has the responsibility to also create virtual gas stations now. So for areas where you don't have the gas pipeline, you know, the issue is that for CNG, you have to create mother stations along where you have gas pipeline. From the mother station, you create the skids that you take to those stations that power. So the gas expansion project is going on. That's why I said the 120 billion stuff was done recently to our 6 companies to increase the infrastructure. It's an infrastructure issue, and it's been challenged. But it's also a testament to the fact that Nigerians are adopting that technology, especially in the logistics. This Christmas, can you imagine NURT, NATO, and there was the other one, Ritian, using CNG buses to bring down, because, and you know what that does? Those who are using petrol or diesel, once they see that the thing can go for 3,500 and their whole price is 30,000, they also quickly adjusted their price.
True.
That's logic.
No one was complaining about price of transportation.
This time, because the CNG, as little as the injection of the, there was this, there's this CI conversion incentive program where the commercial buses have 100% conversion cost.
Anyway,
and all those things are brought. So you're going to see more adoption. But what one should advise those big companies that for haulage companies, they should try to establish their own fueling points so that they don't have to compete with
but then you guys should also ramp up because we need more gas infrastructure, the CNG points where people can get these things. Otherwise, I don't know how long that people will be able to keep up with that. But still on gas, let me ask Mr. Sele. Dr. Okwefa has said that we now have multiple energy options. And of course, it's a good thing for everyone. But one of the grouses that the electricity sector of the energy industry has had with the energy sector generally is the availability of gas for electricity. And we hear all kinds of things, that is because gas is not available, that we're unable to produce, and
we're selling at international prices.
We're selling, all kinds of things. So, what do we need to streamline, Mr. Sele, to ensure that we don't hear of another 12 national grid collapses in 2025, and that energy supply is constant and consistent, hopefully through gas supply?
Now, when we talk about privatization of electricity, first it started with privatization. You see, one of the things that we do is that we treat symptoms. Our attention is always paid to the symptom. We don't treat the causes. What's the foundation of the challenges we're having in that electricity sector? I was also president at that time when they privatized NEPA. Now, what you have is that those who acquired the various electricity infrastructure, did not invest any money. What they did initially was to promise the government that they were going to invest XYZ amount, and at the end of the day, they went in there and borrowed money from Nigerian banks instead of bringing money from overseas. So what you have now is that the government is in a catch-22 position. Because if the government move now to take it over from them with the total indebtedness that they are to the banks, that may also lead to a lot of failures from the bank. So what are the alternatives? One of the major alternatives is that government must seek out a way of how to take it back, because government is still major funders of that sector. You imagine how much billions of naira that government is spending to make sure that meters are provided. It has been privatized. It's not government responsibility to privatize that. It's like going to some of these telecoms and ask them that, we don't have network because there is no supply of diesel. It's none of our business. You have to make it available. You have to invest in how you will source your feed. So at the end of the day, they will give us all manner of excuses, but that's a private sector driven area. And that's one of my challenges that I'm worried that may come up in the oil and gas. NNPC is back on now, and I'm going to tell you something that I think that is likely going to play out. Now that refineries are functional, you are going to have private sector players, powerful people in politics, in business, who will now want to tell us that we need to privatize that same refineries now. And once you have that challenge, because one thing we must know is that private entities don't really care. The first priority of a private man, of a private business, is profit.
Sure.
Okay.
We must be able...
Mr. Tayo, this gas matter and power is a very serious matter.
It is.
Because we understand, because my estate, for instance, runs on an IPP. We don't depend on the national grid at all.
Yes.
So whether the grid runs down 30 times a year, we don't even notice, because we have power most of the time because we're powered by gas from an IPP. But the issue is that in signing the agreement, we were told that gas is sold in dollars. Our gas produced here is sold to us in dollars. Yeah. Should the government not make concessions to companies within Nigeria who intend to generate power for use by Nigerians?
No, they should. In fact, there are some aspects of the PI that I'm not in agreement with. In the attempt to internationalize local energy markets by implication dollarizing it is something that I find inimical to national development. And I do not find a parallel anywhere in the world where such things happen. I do not think that should be the case. I do not think, for instance, that Nigerian refineries should buy crude in dollars or at the rate of international market prices. I do not think so.
But why does that happen? Because you talked about it the other time.
Yes.
And you say
again,
that arrangement is exclusive just to Nigeria.
Government. You see, those that are the policy makers are guided by the extreme neoliberal, conservative economic thinking that negates real national development that has a lot of social components. And that's a problem, really. And that is why the Obasanjo years created out of Nigeria the richest man in Africa, as well as the poorest people in Africa or in the world. It's a paradox of some sort.
Paradox.
So government must always maintain presence in critical sectors such as the energy sector. And this brings us to a very important question. Most of us in the media have been bamboozled to believe that the concept of subsidy is an economic vice, which ordinarily is a virtue. What am I saying in essence? There is nothing wrong with government subsidizing energy. If there's anything government should subsidize, it is energy, next to food. So concessions in this nature can come under a comprehensive subsidy regime that targets energy, because what energy is to the economy is what oxygen is to the living thing.
Yeah.
And God in His infinite mercy has given us air to breathe free of charge. Otherwise, there's a price tag on the air we breathe. I doubt if anybody will live beyond infancy or beyond the day you are born. So that is how economies survive on affordable energy. Where it is not free, it has to be affordable. And so government has a responsibility in this regard. I'm one of those, for example, who oppose the board of subsidy on petroleum products. And I've been advocating for its return. And now, but that is by the way. But for me, the comprehensive way out of this logjam, electricity logjam, is to diversify sources of power generation, distribution, and transmission. And already we have a legal framework that has provided a pathway towards this direction. And that's the Electricity Act of 2023 that has come into effect with this administration. We should begin to ask state governments. A state like Sokoto, for instance, does not need gas to generate electricity in Sokoto. It has abundance of sunshine and wind.
Solar.
So what is the Sokoto state government doing in respect to putting in place investments as well as legal framework to power that jurisdiction?
Anyway,
what are they doing?
We're having an electricity conversation.
Immediately after this.
So this responsibility should now be transferred to the state.
We get
So
that.
you agree that there should be concessions?
Oh, definitely. Electricity should even be subsidized for individuals to use. That is the level of concessions I think should be given to energy consumers. Other people say it for starters.
Okay.
Please, this focus should not be on the states.
Okay.
What are you doing individually to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity?
Let the guests in the second segment answer that question. But there is a question for me that I
And we
want
need
to
to
ask.
talk about the other gas quickly. The cooking gas.
Oh. There are no women on this panel, in case you haven't noticed.
No, the men don't eat. No, the men don't eat.
But the question I would like to ask you is this new, maybe I should take it to Mr. Sele actually. This new conversation, you remember the oil discovery, so to speak, in the north. How far, so far with that, in your own opinion? What are the logjams? We had a conversation with the governor of Bauchi State, and he says he's been having a tough time having some kind of agreement to discuss modalities for making progress with certain federal agencies. What's your understanding of what's happening?
You just said how far, so far, and I will tell you, it's so far. Because it's so far, because if the governor is telling you that he's having issues with, government agencies are not going to come and tell the governor what it is. If NNPC struck an oil well that is of commercial value, commercial quantity, of course, you are not going to tell NNPC or the oil majors to go, let's come and sign an agreement. No, they would. Nobody sees, no ant sees a sugar and walk away. So when you have issues like that, it means that they've not been able. What they are saying is just pittance. It's not there for them to have a commercial quantity that they think is worthy of the $1 billion investment that is required to move that.
All right. Well, Mr. Okwepa,
well, we have
Alero asked you about cooking gas.
That's another kind of gas, but it's also useful in Nigeria, and it's gone up by how many hundreds of, you know.
I think it all has to do with production. We need to produce more, and this program is also another one that is good news that a lot of people don't even pay attention to, and it's at the level of infrastructure expansion and upgrade. The AKK pipeline, the OB3 commissioned recently, the ANOH, ANOL, and all those ones, they are all geared towards making gas more affordable.
Available and affordable.
Affordable. The issue with cooking gas is there's a lot of international demand, and the demand and supply equilibrium is affecting the local consumption. When all these gas commercialization projects goes beyond the infrastructure expansion level, and we can have pipelines all over, and people also invest, which is also ongoing. People invest in the making the gas either compressed for CNG or liquefied, and don't forget, it's not the same sources. There is natural gas. There is what they call the fossil gas. So for it has to do with the international competition. For the purpose of your own estate powering, the availability is getting more, because what you have now is that when they constructed many of these power stations under Obasanjo, they were constructed where there are no gas pipelines.
Yeah.
That was another fault.
Okay.
But now pipelines have gone to most of those places.
Okay.
And you are now having the gas processing plants in Imo, in Delta. So more gases are now going to be affordable. And when the international price changes, you are talking of dollar. It's because the dollar rate is fluctuating.
Yeah.
Once it becomes stabilized, you may not feel it much. And if, like I said, the exporting of crude product, the exporting of refined product, the exporting of our gas comes in, we'll have more reserves. Then we can also fight the cost of naira to dollar.
Okay.
So who knows, maybe tomorrow the naira will keep appreciating against the dollar.
That's what we
Amen.
want. And we told you to look at the crystal ball. Maybe that's what he's saying.
Maybe that's what he's saying. Huh? Dr. Kayode Okwepa, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development, who was with us in the studio, as well as Mr. Majid Dahiru, Energy Security Advocate and a columnist. And Mr. Peter Esele, former President, Trade Union Congress, TUC, who joined us virtually from Lekki in Lagos. Thank you very much for a very wonderful discussion on the matter of Nigeria's oil and gas in 2024.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Sunrise will return in just a moment, and we'll be looking at 2024 and electricity in Nigeria.